Hey everyone, Brad coming to you with Woodsy Leather. I had someone reach out on my YouTube channel and ask if I would create a video on how I rebind Bibles, and that's what I'm going to be doing in this three-part series. So in part one, I want to begin by showing you how I go about removing the cover. I use the same process, be it a brand new Bible, which this is a brand new Bible. This is the ESV Personal Reference Bible, but I use the same process for either a new Bible or an old Bible. And I'm using a quilting ruler. I leave about 1/4 of an inch or so away from the text block and just use my utility knife to cut completely through the cover. Now I know some people use a different method, and that's fine. Some people will only cut slightly into the paper that's attached to the text block, but I go ahead and cut the cover off and find that the covers work well in helping to keep glue from spreading in other areas when I'm gluing specific areas of the Bible, specifically the liner to the cover. And you'll see that as the video progresses. So I then use my scissors and cut the rest of the spine off. And then you can see here that I'm just pulling away the excess material that's left attached to the spine. You'll also be able to see here some of the black backing that's attached to the side of the text block there. It's difficult at times to get all of that off. I try to remove as much of that as possible. And then following that process, I'm going to take and remove the old headband and tailband, as well as the ribbon, because I will be replacing those and using new head and tail bands, and I will be adding some additional ribbons. Now you can see the paper backing here. I try to get as much of this off of the spine as possible. It is difficult to do at times. Sometimes, depending on the text block and how it's glued, it will peel off easier. But I'll try to remove as much of that with my hand as possible before removing the other tailband there. And once that's done, then we move to the next step. And in this step, I'm going to take and apply some glue to the text block after I've put it in my book clamp. And what this will do is, using PVA glue, I will apply some PVA glue to the paper backing, and then up under the paper backing there is going to be reinforcement. The reinforcement is brand new, so I see no need to pull the reinforcement off. I'm going to leave that attached to the text block, but I will apply the PVA glue. PVA glue works well to help remove material from the spine, as well as a wonderful binding agent. So I'm going to just apply a coat of the PVA glue to the text block, specifically on the paper backing, and then I'm going to use a piece of saran wrap, and I just cover the text block with the saran wrap, and then I'll just let it sit for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes or so, and then once it sits, I'll be able to remove it and start removing that paper backing. Now this is a different text block, but I did want to show you how I go about removing the old book cloth. And you can see once I've applied the PVA glue and let it sit for a little while that it does tend to remove pretty easily. I'm also using a little tool to just gently scrape away the old glue from the text block, and you can see towards the bottom how I've been able to remove a lot of that glue. And what it will do at that point is it will expose the paper signatures, and you'll be able to see those. You do want to be careful in doing this because you'll see horizontal there some stitches that are sewing the signatures together, and you want to be careful not to damage those. So I'm just gently scraping to remove this old glue that's attached to the text block. So this is the Bible that I'm rebinding, the ESV Personal Reference Bible. And once I let the glue sit for 10 minutes or so, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, I'll remove the saran wrap, and I'll take this little tool and begin to gently scrape away the paper backing as much as possible. Again, you just want to be gentle with this. This does take some time to do. I just try to remove as much of this old material as possible. You can see that I'm working down towards the edge of the Bible. At times, the edge of the Bible will be a lot more glue applied to the edge of the Bible, so you want to be aware of that. Now, at this point, what I'm doing is I'm using a butter knife, again, just gently using a butter knife and trying to scrape away some of that paper backing. And also I find that your hands or your thumb works really well. Just rubbing and applying some pressure will help, along with the glue that's allowed the material to soften. You can take and remove as much of that as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do try to get as much of the old material off as possible. That way, when I get ready to apply the new Oxford Hollow, which this Bible did not have an Oxford Hollow, you'll see that created and applied in just a few moments. But just remove as much of this material as possible, clean it up really good, and then from that point you'll be ready to apply the Oxford Hollow if you choose to do so, or if you just apply some paper backing to the text block. I find that the Oxford Hollow works well. I like the option to be able to do that. Just clean as much of this up as possible. Okay, the next step is going to be to cut the ribbons. I'm going to be using black 1/4 inch double face satin ribbons on this Bible. 2 seem to fit really well, so I'm just going to measure the ribbons to begin with. And then once I've got the measurement for the ribbons, I'll just use my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut the first ribbon and then just line the second ribbon up based on the size of the first ribbon, and then I will cut that ribbon as well. These ribbons work really well. I use both the 1/4 inch and the 3/8 inch, but the 1/4 inch seem to fit really well using this size text block. So once the ribbons have been cut, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure both the head and tail band. I just simply lay the material on the text block and then make a marking with my pen, and then I'll use the quilting ruler and line the quilting ruler up against the top of the band material, and then again I'll use my rotary cutter once I get everything lined up, and then I'm just going to cut that, and then I'll use that piece to measure the second one. And then I'm just using a Pilot G2 pen. Works really well for this. Just make a little marking on it, and then I'll place it back on my cutting mat, use my quilting ruler to line that up, and then I'm going to use my rotary cutter to cut that piece of material. So at this point I've got the 2 ribbons I'm going to be using, as well as the head and the tail band. And then the head and the tail band material does seem to fray at times, so I'll use my lighter just to singe those edges. If it does tend to fray, I'll do this not only with the head and tail band at times, but also especially on the ribbons once they are cut after they've been installed. All right, for the next step, we're going to be measuring and making the Oxford Hollow. Now, not all rebinders use an Oxford Hollow. I do like to use the Oxford Hollow and use them in just about every rebind that I do. The purpose of the Oxford Hollow is to help strengthen the spine, but the one thing I like about it is that it also gives you something to attach your cover to as well. So I just like the way that they work, but you can see that I'm measuring here for the Oxford Hollow, and I generally install the hollow from the headband down to the tailband. It doesn't always adjoin the headband and the tailband, but pretty close. And I'm actually using book cloth. Black book cloth is what I'm using for this particular rebind, but I use a variety of colors for the book cloth, and I've learned over just the time of doing these that it works better if you will fold the book cloth inward, and you can see that I'm doing that here. I'm just measuring and cutting. I'm going to fold it over 3 times, and then once I get my measurements, get it cut, I'll just fold the Oxford Hollow over, and then I'm going to take some glue here, and I'm going to apply the glue just to the top of the Oxford Hollow. Then once the glue has been applied, I'll make sure that it is brushed in well on the Oxford Hollow. Then once that's done, I'm simply going to fold that over. And if you've not tried an Oxford Hollow before, I would encourage you to do so. They're really easy to make, and again, I do like the way that they attach to the text block. I generally glue my Oxford Hollow to the text block, as you'll see in just a moment. And then I'm going to use my bone folder here just to press down really well so the glue can adhere. You can also use craft paper, use construction paper before to make the Oxford Hollow. I've just found that the book cloth works really well, so that's what I use for all of the Oxford Hollows that I make. All right, at this point we're going to be installing the new ribbons, the new head and tail bands, and the Oxford Hollow. So I will apply just a little bit of glue at the top of the Bible. This is where I'm going to be installing the two 1/4 inch black double face satin ribbons. So I will apply the glue to the text block to start with, and then I'll apply some to the ribbon itself. Use just a little metal tool here to press down on the ribbon to make sure that it adheres well. Do the same thing for the other ribbon. And then you want to give it just a little bit of time to glue, for the glue to adhere. I've also seen some other rebinders do something a little bit different here. They'll actually tape the ribbons down just to make sure that they are applied and make sure that they adhere well. I've just found that applying glue to both the text block as well as the ribbons and just pressing them down firmly works well, and then I'll put another coat of glue over top of the ribbons, and then I'll also apply some glue to the headband that I'm going to be installing. So glue is applied to the headband as well. Then I'm going to just press it down firmly with my fingers, and then I'll take another tool and go back over top of it. Generally I'll use the bone folder for this. That seems to work pretty well. Also, this little metal tool does a good job as well. This little metal tool is just for rounding edges, and then the bone folder works well also. And then once that has time to glue, then I'll move on to the tailband and use the same process for applying the tailband. Just put some glue on the text block itself, make sure that's rubbed in well, and then I'll take and apply some glue to the tailband. Use the same process here as well. Used a little metal tool just to press down firmly with my fingers, just to make sure that it attaches well. The bone folder again works well for doing this. You just want to make sure that they're both straight, and then I'll also apply just a layer of glue over top just to make sure that it adheres well to the text block. Now I'm going to apply some glue to the spine. Make sure that it's rubbed in well. And this is applied to the spine so that I'll be able to attach the Oxford Hollow to the spine. And I generally glue down the side of the Oxford Hollow that is folded, so the folded side is generally glued down to the spine. I think I've seen some other rebinders do it the opposite way, which that's fine as well, whatever works for you. Also apply glue to the Oxford Hollow. Make sure that I've got a good coat of glue on both the spine and the Oxford Hollow, and I'll just line it up. I'm going to press down firmly with my fingers, make sure that it's on straight, and then I'll use the bone folder and just make sure that it's pressed down well. Just want to make sure that it adheres well and that it's glued to the spine. All right, next we're going to tuck these ribbons in and cut the ribbons and then finish preparing the text block. I generally tuck one ribbon in the Old Testament and then one in the New Testament. And the other thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to cut these tabs at an angle. I just find that that looks nicer when you are applying the end sheet to the Bible. I just think it looks nicer. And the other thing I do is I'll take and just lightly sand down the inside of this tab as well as the piece of cardstock. I just find that this helps the glue to adhere better. Really don't want glue coming apart. So if you'll just lightly sand it and wipe down what has been sanded, do this on both sides. Again, I just find that this helps the glue to adhere. Now this is not required. You don't have to do this. Again, I just find over time, or found over time, that it helps the glue to adhere. Then I'm going to apply the glue on both sides here of the tab. Just want to apply just enough glue so that we'll get a good bond. Then I'll fold it over and use my bone folder to make sure that it's pressed down well. And then I'll take a rag and go back over it with a rag just to make sure that there's not any glue on the original piece of cardstock there, or the end sheet. Again, applying glue to this other side. As far as glue is concerned, this is PVA glue, and I know rebinders have used a variety of different brands of glue, and this is actually jade glue. So I just started using this recently, but generally any PVA glue will work well. Just using a microfiber cloth to clean up the excess glue. I'm going to get as much of that off of the cardstock, the end sheet, as I can. And then the last step is going to be to just cut the ribbons. So I'll make sure the ribbons are lined up. I don't measure a specific inch, just kind of eyeball it here. And then I just use my rotary cutter and cut it at a 45-degree angle. And that's going to be it, with the exception of just singeing the ribbons just so that they don't fray. And that completes part 1 of how to rebind a Bible. So be on the lookout for part 2 and part 3. And in part 2, we're going to be working on the measurements for the liner, the measurements for the cover, and we'll go over how to cut the liner, to cut the tabs in the liner, how to apply the liner to the cover, and then also how to prepare the cover so that we can attach the text block to it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. I hope that it's been helpful. I've been encouraged by other rebinders who have done videos very similar to this. Again, there are a variety of different styles that people use, so I hope that you find what I have done encouraging, and I hope that it will be beneficial to you. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.